So here we are in Book 9 of Augustine's Confessions. Accompany Augustine on his journey, his path, drawing closer to God, his experience of love in his life, being loved and the need then also to love others, learning what love is. And he discovered God within himself. So long he searched for God outside. And how about you and I too? Search for happiness and pleasure outside of ourselves. And Augustine helps us realize that it's from within that we discover God in us and discover ourselves as agents of God, image, likeness of God. So Book 9 ends the autobiographical portion of these confessions. We follow Augustine from his birth, his family, the tortuous road leading from one fascination to another, from the occult to looking into, trying to discover where evil came from, but always from the very beginning, throughout. Friends have meant so much to him, his family, so much to him. Augustine spontaneously reaching beyond himself to the transcendent, to God. And so now we've got to the point where in the garden, again a garden, Augustine giving in. He had already converted in his mind and certainly in his heart. And now begins in Book 10 the conversion of a lifestyle. How to live differently, because he knew from his mother that to be a Christian was not an intellectual belief or just simply an emotional belief. It was a lifestyle. It was living as Christ with other Christians, living as a community, to give witness to God who is community, to make evident to others that it is possible, that truly we are called to build up the reign of God among ourselves, and the reign of God will grow. So this book 9, called Death and Rebirth, is how he died to a former way of life, now in practice, not just intellectually, not just emotionally, but actually in reality. And at the beginning he says, "How sweet did it suddenly seem to me to shrug off these sweet frivolities. How glad I now was to get rid of them, I who had been loath to let them go. You cast them out, and entered yourself to take their place, you who are lovelier than any pleasure." This is his God. This is our God. This is who we can discover, as Augustine did. Somebody who loves us and cares for us, is always there for us. This is our God. "I should withdraw the service of my tongue from the market of speechifying." This is what he was convinced he needed to do, to change his lifestyle, to show that he truly believed in a loving God, the God of communion, the God of relationships. So he determined that he would abandon these lying follies and legal battles, no longer by my mouth weapons for their frenzy. What words, what thoughts, ability to let that go. "With the arrows of your charity, you had pierced our hearts," he says at the beginning of chapter 3 of Book 9. The hour of your charity you had pierced our hearts. And if you know anything about Augustinians, we who pretend and try to be truly followers of Christ in the footsteps of Augustine, you know that that is our symbol. The arrow, the dart, which pierces the heart. This inspired the traditional icon for Augustine, a pierced and a burning heart. So Augustine is known for restlessness, for longing, for search, and also for having been pierced through no effort of his own in reality, with the hour of charity, God's love, to be able to share that with others. So he was not alone. Around him at this time when he was leaving off his practice, leaving off his dedication to privilege and possessions, when he was going to leave off his lifestyle. So not long after that, our conversion and rebirth and baptism, Nebridius, one of his friends, shared his joy. So he was with Nebridius, Alypius, his very close friend from Tagaste, his birthplace, who had been his student before. He was with his own son, with Adeodatus. He was with his mother, Monica. And Augustine was concerned and dedicates these few pages to that small community with whom he began to die to himself and his former way of life, to begin to live a new way of life, a life in community, communion, sharing his gifts with others. And he says of Nebridius that he became a believing Catholic. And when he went back to Africa, his own people, where he was from, he was serving in perfect chastity and continence. And his whole household of Nebridius became Christian through his example. So it was a friend of Augustine who was baptized and followed Christ. The example that he gave animated and encouraged Nebridius' entire family to become Christian. And when that happened, a few years later, when they were in Africa, he died. He died very young. As we're talking about now, the time period, the fall of the year 386, when Augustine is 33 years old. He's about to abandon his profession and go off with his friends, to live in a rural farming area where he could dedicate time to something new and something different. What he tells about this is that Alypius, my heart's brother, also decided to submit himself to baptism. So here Augustine, the man of heart, the burning heart, called Alypius, his close friend, my heart's brother. These are the people he gathered around himself. These are the people he shared the joy of beginning a new life, dying to his former life. When the holidays were over, he says in chapter 13, I announced my retirement to the citizens of Milan. They would have to find another word peddler. He would no longer teach. He would no longer be the orator. He would no longer be the rhetorician. He would no longer wag his tongue with lies and untruths. So they were associated with Adeodatus. And what he says about Adeodatus in chapter 14 is moving. That Adeodatus was with us as well, my son, according to the flesh, born of my sin. Very fair had you fashioned him, a proud father. He was then about 15, but surpassed many educated men of weighty learning. And so we were baptized, and all our dread about our earlier lives dropped away from us. They were baptized, Augustine, Alypius, Adeodatus, at the Easter Vigil service at the Cathedral, the Duomo of Milan, April 24th, the year 387. That baptismal font is still there. And if you're ever in Milan, please take advantage, go there. Renew your baptismal promises in that same spot where Augustine in that year so many centuries ago became a member of the Christian community in lifestyle, heart, soul. He wanted to follow Christ and lead others and live with others who follow Christ. He said, you gather like-minded people to dwell together. And so you brought into our fellowship another young man named Evodius, who was from our hometown. So he's from Tagaste. He had been serving as an administrative officer in a special branch in Milan, and he had converted to you before we were. He had abandoned his secular career to enlist in your service. And this is what Augustine was about, abandoning what had given him his lifestyle, in search of a place where we could best serve you. Augustine, Alypius, Adeodatus, and now Evodius, we made arrangements to return as a group to Africa, to go back, to go home, to go where he was from, where he came from, where his first breaths of life were breathed. So a tremendous decision, a momentous decision to go back to Africa. While we were at Ostia, which is the port city of Rome, on the Tiber, he says, my mother died. Monica died. And he says immediately, accept my confession and thanks for mercies without number. I'm passing over many things, he says, for time is short. He's relating this, what happened to him, so significant, so meaningful to him. While he was there in Ostia with his mother, with this group of people, he remembered how his mother had been a peacekeeper and a peacemaker whenever she could, if friction occurred between those who were around her. She would hear many bitter accusations against his father, Augustine's father, her husband, but eventually she achieved Patricius, her husband's, conversion as well, shortly before his death. So Augustine says that that short period of time when they're waiting in Ostia for the ship to go back to Africa, we happened to be alone through the mysterious workings of your will. And we stood leaning against a window which looked out on a garden, another garden, so significant for Augustine. The garden where the pears, the garden where the figs, the garden where he had this extraordinary ecstasy, an extraordinary vision with his mother. Just as the pears were a sinful act with others, I could not have done this alone, remember he says. And again, this conversion with others, a communal conversion with Alypius, with his mother. And now here we have an ecstasy, an ecstatic vision with his mother. Truly unique. So they were there, they were talking, their minds and hearts lifted up to heaven, thinking of the communion of the saints, and he could tell that his mother had been transformed. But I have nothing more to live for, she said to him. 5 days afterward, or not much more, she took to her bed with fever. She said, you are to bury your mother here. He said, no, mother. Wait, we'll take you back to Africa. Now, lay this body anywhere. Take no trouble over it. One thing only do I ask of you, that you remember me at the altar of the Lord, wherever you may be. And this was the commitment that she asked of Augustine, and Augustine certainly fulfilled it. She died far from her own city, but she said, nothing's far from God. On the 9th day of her illness, in the 56th year of her age, in my 33rd year, Augustine says, that religious and godly soul was set free from her body. I closed her eyes, and a huge sadness surged into my heart. And so the last few pages of this book 9 are dedicated to the sadness that Augustine felt, the deep sadness at losing this mother who had given birth to him twice, in the flesh and in the faith. Many tears, many travails, much trust, much perseverance. And he finishes this chapter, finishes this book, by saying, my Lord, my God, inspire your servants who are my brethren, your children who are my masters, whom I now serve with heart and voice and pen. He's writing about you and me. That as many of them as read this may remember Monica, your servant, at your altar, along with Patricius, sometime her husband. And from their flesh you brought me into this life, though how I do not know. Let them remember with loving devotion these two who were my parents in this transitory light, but also were my brethren under you our Father, within our mother, the Catholic Church, and my fellow citizens in the eternal Jerusalem. So this is Augustine's petition, that you and I remember his parents in prayer. And I encourage you to do that. Remember your own family, your own loved ones. Bring them to God, and bring them to God. Share with them your faith. Share with them your journey. This personal encounter with Christ, which enabled Augustine to change mind and heart and then lifestyle, is capable of bringing us to the many conversions in our life the lifestyle which will give witness to a loving God, a God who is present to us.